Hey, hello, hello. Welcome back to the next intermediate lesson on SEDA College Online. I'm very happy you could join me today for this next lesson because I think it's going to be a very, very good one for you. We're going to talk about something that'll be very useful for your English, not only speaking, but also writing. So we're going to go into a lot of detail, and we're going to talk about a lot of grammar ideas and grammar concepts. So don't worry if not everything seems totally clear at first. By the time we get to the practice, I think you'll be okay. So get ready, get comfortable, because we are going to begin. So what is this grammar concept that I'm talking about? Well, it is relative clauses. Woo, woo, yes. They are a very important part of language. So we're going to spend a lot of time. I want to try and answer every question. I want to talk about, or hope to answer, what are they, how to make them, and why do we use them. These are the three things I want to answer for you by the end of this lesson. Okay, so before we begin though, I need to do a bit of review. So if you watched my conditional language lessons, you saw a bit about clauses. So I'm going to talk about them again, just in case you've forgotten or in case anyone is new here watching this lesson. So a clause is one of the fundamental parts of language. So all parts of language can be broken into smaller sections. And so sentences are the exact same way. So sentences have smaller parts just like words. Let's take a word like elephant. Well, that's one complete unit. Well, I can also take elephant and break it into smaller parts, syllables, elephant. And I can even take the syllables and make them into smaller sections, letters. And you can do the same thing with a sentence. You can do the same thing with any part of language. It can be as small as a word and a syllable, and you can make those smaller, or it can be as big as an essay, and you can take an essay into paragraphs. All parts of language can be made into smaller sections. So, for example, a sentence like, I like ice cream and I like cake. That is one complete sentence. However, it has two clauses. I like ice cream, I like cake. Both of those are individual clauses, and we can put them together to make one sentence. In addition to that, clauses have types. Excuse me. There are two types of clauses. So you can have an independent clause, or totally complete, or you can have a dependent clause, or incomplete. So what does that mean? Well, let's look at my previous example. I like ice cream and I like cake. I like ice cream is an independent clause. It is a totally complete idea and a totally complete sentence. I like cake is as well a totally complete clause and a totally complete sentence. I don't need any more information. They're both finished. However, they can be unfinished and incomplete. So let's look at this sentence. Before I go to work, I always eat breakfast. So we have two clauses here. Before I go to work, I always eat breakfast. Before I go to work is dependent. It's incomplete. I cannot say it by itself because it needs more information. If I turn to my friend and I say, before I go to work, my friend says, okay, what? You need the extra information. However, I always eat breakfast. That is a totally complete sentence, an independent clause. So clauses have these two types, independent finished and dependent not finished. Well, relative clauses are a type of dependent clause. They work inside of a sentence to make the sentence complete or to add information. So, what are they? Well, they're clauses that give information about a noun. You use them to express details or, further ideas or to give extra information about a noun in the sentence. Well, so how do you make them? Well, they are always made in this way. They have a relative pronoun and then the subject and a verb. So remember that clauses are small sentences. So you'll always have a subject and a verb. And at the beginning for a relative clause will always be a specific relative pronoun. There are 5 different relative pronouns. There's who for people, which for things or animals, where for locations, that for people, things, or animals, and whose for possession. You can think of whose like of who or of which. So, of course, you might immediately see we have who, which, and where. These 3 very clear: people, things, locations, and then that, which is all of them. So what's the difference? Well, really, that is for which. It's for things or animals. That and which are totally equal, and you can switch them for no difference. Really, I think that is more common. I think we use that more normally and more in more situations. Which is a little formal. Other people might disagree. Other people might have different feelings. But to me, in my opinion, which is a little formal, where that is more common. Um, Now, for that and who. If we talk about grammar rules, technically, who is for only for people. You cannot use that for people. But sometimes it happens. Sometimes people say that for people. This is actually a little rude because you make a person into an object. It's kind of a way to be rude. I don't recommend it, but you may see it, you may hear it. And those are the 5 relative pronouns. So these are the 5 words that will always begin a relative clause. Next, let's have some examples. So Amanda is the woman who lives across the road. So here I have the sentence, Amanda is the woman, and I want to give more information about her. What's important? What more? Well, she's the one who lives across the road. So now I can give that extra information about Amanda. Or I can say, this is the car that I just bought today. I have the complete sentence, this is the car, and I want to describe the car. I want to give that extra information, so I say that I just bought today. Or something like, my grandparents live in the house where they were born. I have the sentence, my grandparents live in the house. Independent clause, totally complete. And now I want to describe the location. This is the location where they were born. And finally, I have a friend whose dog is very annoying. So now I want to describe the relationship between the dog and the friend. And I want to describe that this dog of this person, of this friend, is very annoying. So I can use whose to show that relationship. So remember that a relative clause always has a subject and a verb because it's a small sentence. I bought. They were. The dog is. They'll always have a subject. And also, note that these are pronouns. The relative pronouns, who, that, where, and whose, are pronouns. And a pronoun is a word that represents another noun. So you can always undo the sentence to kind of test what does it mean. So Amanda is the woman. Amanda lives across the road. This is the car. I just bought it. I just bought the car today. My grandparents live in the house. They were born in the house. Or I have a friend. my friend's dog is very annoying. So you can always undo that change from relative pronoun to the original idea to kind of check the meaning and check what is it talking about. Also be careful with the pronoun where. Um, so you might think a house, well, that's an object, a thing, so I should use which or that. Um, but where is better because the idea is location. That's very important here. It's not always just the noun, but what is the idea? Is the house important or is the location important? If the location is important, we'll use where. Okay, so what next? Well, there are also two types of relative clauses. So some clauses are essential to the sentence and some are not. This is called defining or non-defining. These words are kind of, fancy, um, uh, technical grammar words. What's important is that a defining clause is essential to the sentence. The sentence does not make sense without the clause, whereas non-defining clauses are extra. We don't need them. You can remove them and they're unimportant. So let's look at an example of a defining or essential clause. So if I think, or if I take the example from before, Amanda is the woman who lives across the road. Well, this sentence is somewhat strange because if I remove the relative clause, I take it away, Amanda is the woman. What does that mean? Amanda is the woman. There's no idea, no meaning. I need the relative clause to add the meaning. Who lives across the road? Okay. So this is a situation where the relative clause is essential. So what about one where it isn't? A non-defining. Well, let's take this example. I visited my grandma, who's nearly 100 years old, last week. So in this example, we have a relative clause giving extra information, who is nearly 100 years old. But the sentence does not require the information. I visited my grandma last week. Okay. Totally complete. Finished sentence. But I want to say, I want to add the information. I like my grandma. I think it is amazing. She's nearly 100 years old, so I want to say that. So I can add the relative clause. I visited my grandma, who is nearly 100 years old, last week. So this is the difference. In this sentence, the relative clause is not needed. I can remove it, no change. I can have it, no change. Here, though, the sentence does change. If without the relative clause, the sentence has no meaning, then you know it's defining. And also know that for non-defining clauses, you must have a comma. So they're always separated by commas on both sides because they're extra. We don't need them, so I need the commas to show that they are additional information that I can remove from the sentence. Okay, so some additional notes about relative clauses. Also, in a defining relative clause, the pronoun is sometimes optional. You might know this already. You might hear how sometimes English speakers will say that or they will not say that. Well, the rule is based on the relative clause. So let's look at this first example. This is the new watch that I bought last week. I should say this. This is the new watch I bought last week. So in this example, that or which is totally optional. I don't need it. I can say, this is the new watch I bought last week, or this is the new watch that I bought last week. No difference. But in this sentence, it is required. Frank is the man who plays for Liverpool FC. I cannot say Frank is the man plays for Liverpool FC. We can't do that. We must have the relative clause. So why? What's the difference? Well, it's based on the subjects. So if your sentence has a subject in the independent clause, this, and a subject in the relative clause, I, the pronoun is optional. We don't need it. Because it's an object here. I bought the watch last week. So we don't need the relative clause to connect the two. But in the second example, the relative clause, we don't have a subject. Frank is the man. Okay, Frank is our subject. Who plays for Liverpool? Oh, there's no subject. Well, in this sentence, who, it is the subject. So that's why it's required. So if the relative clause has a subject and the sentence, the independent clause has a subject, you can remove the pronoun. We don't need it. But if the relative clause does not have a subject, the pronoun is required because the pronoun then is the subject. That's kind of the difference between the two. So this may be a little tricky and it may be kind of unclear, subject, not subject. So you can also kind of cheat and just ignore everything. you can skip the rules. If you will always be correct if you always say the pronoun. So you can always say it. You can always say that. You know, this is the new watch that I bought last week. Frank is the man who plays for Liverpool. If you always say the pronoun, you'll always be correct. But just know, in some situations it is optional, and many English speakers will remove it because it is not required. And that is when these rules are important, is when we're omitting it. All right. So, whew, yes, that was a lot of information about relative clauses. So let's try to practice this a bit. Um, I said earlier, by the time we come to the practice, you may be confused, but you won't be at the end of the practice. So here to begin are your notes. We have the pronouns who, which, that, where, and whose. And these are the pronouns I want you to use in the sentences. So I will show you a sentence. The pronoun is missing. You just need to choose who, which, that, where, or whose. Okay, so number one, Ryan and Joseph have twins, often need to hire a babysitter. Just in case someone is unclear, twins are two babies born together, at the same time from the same mother. Those are twins. They can look the same or they can look different, but if they are born at the same time, they are twins. So, Ryan and Joseph have twins, often need to hire a babysitter. So, who, which, that, where, or whose, or this blank. All right, make your guess, and let's check. So, the correct answer is who. So, be careful, because these are people, and yes, there are two people, but who and whose are not singular and plural. They are not connected. So for one person or every person, all people, will use who. So in this situation, Ryan and Joseph, who have twins, often need to hire a babysitter. And we can also see this is a situation where the relative clause is non-defining. It's not essential. And this is because the sentence is totally okay without it. Ryan and Joseph often need to hire a babysitter. Cool. But maybe I want to say why. Maybe I want to add information. So I can use the relative clause. Ryan and Joseph, who have twins. Oh, that's why. That's why they often need to hire a babysitter. So that's that extra information we're adding. Okay, let's check. Number two. My new laptop is a lot faster than the old one you bought. My new laptop is a lot faster than the old one you bought. So, what's the correct relative pronoun here? Who, which, that, where, or whose? Okay, make your guess. All right, let's check. The correct relative pronoun is that or which. They're both correct. And so why? Well, one here is a pronoun for laptop. And so I know then laptop is a thing, so I can use which or that. In this situation, I think that is more natural. It's more often. My new laptop is a lot faster than the one that you brought. Which is a little, I don't know, it sounds a little too formal to me. All right, next example. We visited the same village Shakespeare was born. We visited the same village Shakespeare was born. Okay, so for this one, be careful. Think a lot about the idea. Am I talking about the thing or am I talking about something else more important? Okay, make your guess. The correct answer is where. Yep, we visited the same village where Shakespeare was born. Yeah, so even though a village is a thing, what's more important is the location where he was born. He was born here. That's what I care about. So I visited the same village where he was born. So always be careful with that between that and where, that you're thinking about not just the object, but it is the idea about the location. Okay, next example, number 4. We all went to the party except for Martha. Doesn't like parties. Martha, no fun. Martha doesn't like parties. We all went to the party except for Martha. Doesn't like parties. So, what's the correct pronoun? Okay, correct answer is who. So why? Well, because it's Martha. We all went to the party except for Martha, who doesn't like parties. This is a situation where similar to number 1, it is a non-defining and a non-essential relative clause, but I want to say more information. We all went to the party except for Martha. Complete, finished idea. But I want to say more, so I can say why. Well, why? Because she doesn't like parties, so who doesn't like parties? Okay, next example, number 5. The neighbor dog is very cute, is out for a walk. The neighbor dog is very cute, is out for a walk. Okay, this one's very important. You need to think about the relationship between the neighbor and the dog. All right, the correct answer is whose. The neighbor whose dog is very cute is out for a walk. So, whose is because it's the idea that the neighbor owns the dog, and I want to talk about that relationship, that this dog belongs to the neighbor. So I use whose to show that relationship. Okay, final example. Oh, that pasta you made yesterday was delicious. That pasta you made yesterday was delicious. So, what here? Correct answer is that. Yep, the pasta that you made, or you could say which, the pasta which you made yesterday was delicious. And this is a good example where I can show it is not required. So it is totally correct to say the pasta you made yesterday was delicious. Correct. Or the pasta that you made yesterday was delicious. Both are correct because I have a subject, pasta was delicious, and I have a subject here, you made yesterday. So now I know the relative pronoun is not required. Okay, so I hope this helps shows the relationship for all of these relative pronouns because really we talk so much about these different rules for the concepts, but it's not as difficult once you begin to use them and you see you just need to connect the right one to the right idea. Okay, so finally what I want to talk about is why are they important? Why am I talking so much about relative clauses? Well, one is because sometimes they're necessary. As I said in previous examples, like Amanda is the woman who lives across the street, it's necessary. You must use a relative clause to complete that sentence. But more importantly, they can improve your writing. Relative clauses can really, really, really help take your writing to a better level. So you can combine sentences to make more advanced writing with relative clauses. If you feel that your English writing is sometimes sentence, 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 and you say, ugh, I know that doesn't sound good, but I don't know what to do, Well, relative clauses can help solve that problem. It's not the only way, but it's one way. So I have some example story I'll start with. Let's look at this story. There is an old man. He is my neighbor. He has a dog that is very cute. The dog is very fun too. Sometimes I walk the dog for the old man. So, this is a good story. Everything is correct. We have a nice relative clause here, a dog that is very cute. And, it all connects together and it's all good. But it's a little robotic, a little, there is an old man. He is my neighbor. He has a dog. It's just sentence, sentence, sentence. Subject, subject, subject. So we can use relative clauses to really kind of boost this story and make it a lot more advanced and to help it, connect and flow together better. So how? Let's look at version 2. I have a neighbor who is an old man. He has a dog that is very cute and very fun. Sometimes I walk the dog for the old man. So, now this story, same story, but this one sounds a lot better. It feels a lot better because now the relative clauses let the ideas connect together without all of the stops of the subject, verb, subject, verb. So I've taken the first two sentences. There is an old man, he is my neighbor, and I've connected them together with the relative clause who. I have a neighbor who is an old man. And now again, the next two sentences, he has a dog that is very cute. The dog is very fun. I've connected them because it's the same, it's the same idea, the same sentence. So I can connect it. Why say two sentences when I can use one? He has a dog that is very cute and very fun. So you can actually connect relative clauses together with and connect them into bigger phrases. And then finally, sometimes I walk the dog for the old man. That sentence is the same. So I took one that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentences and made it into 3 shorter, more complex, advanced sentences to make the story just a lot better, a lot more natural. So I really, I recommend to try to use these relative clauses the next time you write in English. I promise that they'll help take it to a more advanced level. And I want to make it clear, relative clauses can also connect inside of themselves. So, for example, I can say, I have a neighbor who is an old man that is very kind. So you can connect relative clauses in this kind of together way so that you can even add more information if you want. But as I said, they're wonderful for writing, so I promise if you give them a try, I think it'll improve your writing. So that is everything for this lesson. What did we talk about? Well, we talked about sentence clauses, and we talked about how there were two types, independent and dependent. And then we talked about specific dependent clauses, relative clauses, to give details about a noun. Sometimes the relative clause is required, and sometimes it's not. If it's not required, you separate it with commas. And then the 5 relative pronouns were who, which, that, where, and whose. Those were all of the relative pronouns we used today. And then we talked about how they're so important for writing because they can improve your writing. They can help take sentences, and when the sentences talk about the same thing, you can connect them together to make a more advanced sentence and to help really increase the complexity in your writing. So yes, we did a lot today, so thank you for coming all the way to the end with me. As always, if you had any questions or you have any now, feel free to post the comments and make some questions, and I'll be happy to try to help answer any you have. I hope that these relative clauses will help you. I hope you can use them the next time you write in English, and I'm sure that they'll make your writing better. So thank you so much for coming with me today. Thank you for watching my lesson. I hope it helped, and I hope you have a good afternoon. All right, thank you so much. Bye bye.